Hi everyone, and welcome to the 17th Quantum London webinar. For everyone who's new, just a few words on Quantum London. We're a community interested in understanding the business implications of quantum computing. So what sets us apart from other quantum groups is our focus on trying to help non-technical business professionals understand what quantum technology might mean for them and their industries. We do this through running webinars like the one tonight, as well as more informal roundtable discussions. We also run a community-led quantum computing coding group for those who want to get more hands-on. So tonight we have another great event focusing on the quantum workforce, with many members of our community keen to explore the various quantum computing opportunities that are arising. It's really important for us to understand the different options available, as well as the skills needed to work in this industry. To shed some light on these topics, we have a fantastic panel of speakers with us tonight, including Chris Bishop, who's a technology futurist, TEDx speaker, ex-IBMer, and Master of Ceremonies at Inside Quantum Technology. We have Shahar Keinan, who is co-founder and CEO of Polaris Quantum Biotech and former CSO of Cloud Pharmaceuticals. We're also joined by Farai, Mazhandu, the founding president at One Quantum Africa and the co-founder of Bayit Quantum Technologies, and John Barnes, who's owner and principal recruiter in Tangled Positions, who's working within the quantum arena. There'll be the opportunity to ask our panelists any questions you have tonight, so please use the chat function to pose your questions. I also have with me today Paolo, one of the founders of Quantum London. We'll be facilitating the discussion today and moderating your questions. So welcome to all our panelists, and thank you so much for being here. I would just like to start off by asking each of you to give us a brief introduction overview of how you started your quantum journey. So maybe if we start off with Chris first.
Okay, well, so I've always been fascinated by technology at a meta level, right? And I worked at IBM for 15 years, actually joined when Deep Blue beat Garry Kasparov at chess, and then left when IBM Watson crushed the two reigning grand champions at Jeopardy. So that was my bookends AI experience at IBM. But I became interested in quantum. I was invited to an event in Boston a couple of years ago that Lawrence Gassman and Alan Meckler were running, called Inside Quantum Technology. We hit it off, we became friends, and I offered to participate and contribute. And so far I've done 3 events. A little plug here, we're doing it again in November, a hybrid version. We're gonna have people hopefully in person in New York, as well as live streaming it. So that's my introduction to quantum. It's been a fascinating space, and I'm always interested in what's coming, certainly from a technology perspective, and how it's going to influence skills people need and what career opportunities they might have. So.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Chris. Shahar?
Hey, so I arrived at quantum about 1.5 years ago. I'm a computational chemist by training. So did a lot of quantum chemistry calculations and thought about quantum states of things, but never about quantum computing. 1.5 years ago, when we started to think about Polaris and how we can solve some of our problems, we figured out that the only way to solve those problems was using quantum computing. And then we had no choice. We had to learn how to use them. We had to find the right system for us to work with, the right collaborations. And we've been doing it since then. We are bootstrapping ourselves both on the technology side and inside the company as well. Mm-hmm.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Shahar. Farai?
Oh, thank you, Anna. So I come to quantum in an interesting way, but perhaps I did physics. I've got a background in physics, so it's not very remote that I ended up in quantum. But however, I took a break between my first degree and when I got an MSc. It was a space of about 10 years or so. So the first question I got from my supervisor in postgrad was, why are you coming back into academia? Because I had been in construction and I liked the fast learning curve there. And I began to identify a lot of problems that I realized the industry didn't have solutions, ready solutions for. So because of that, I went into IoT, and I've got this attraction to things that are challenging for some reason. So one of the most difficult courses I did in postgrad was quantum mechanics. And believe you me, it's really true when people quote Feynman to say, you never say you understand quantum. So it was not easy. And I didn't think I was going to do a postgrad in it. Funny enough, The supervisor that I managed to get through to was looking at getting into quantum information processing for MSc. Then that was my only option. And I was like, okay, I'll take it up. So I started going in that direction. It was a new direction altogether for the department. Survived with videos from people like John Martinez, and that's how I started to do my MSc. And back then the community was not as close and as developed as we have now, so it was rather lonely. It was the University of Wits in South Africa. But however, through that experience, I began to make the most of it, to say, okay, this is an interesting new space. I don't know if I was going to be able to contribute in any meaningful way from Africa for some reason, because most of the people who get to shine, in, as far as I'm concerned, the people who leave the continent and join the bigger and better resource universities. But however, I took a leap of faith, and luckily there were quantum computers on the cloud, started playing with them. And as the time went on, communities started forming, and there was a hackathon, a Qiskit hackathon. Met a lot of people from across the world. And, when I shared about my research, there was space for it at the hackathon. And we came, as first run-ups. So ever since then, it has been one thing leading to another. I ended up, of course, because of COVID, there wasn't any movement possible after 2019. So I've been at home and said to myself, I became a small shining beacon for people in Africa. And, I had questions about how other people could do it, and I couldn't answer those. So the idea was to look for those answers. The best way was to get in a community. So Andre and Denise were thinking of, setting up One Quantum. I reached out to them when I caught wind of the news and said, look, I'm at home. I love quantum, and I've got a lot of people that reach out to me that I think, will help me to set this up in a community. And then I started working with them, setting up the Women in Quantum chapter, the One Quantum startups. Then I ended up, after learning the ropes, leading an effort to build the community in Africa. So that's my journey. And now, after the community work, we recently hosted a first Quantum in Africa summit, well attended, supported by companies like Honeywell and many other stand-up partners. And it has been a great journey. And now I've got co-founded a startup, via Quantum. And the idea is to train people in the continent, in awareness, those who need proficiency, and also, help the world to learn about Africa and about the quantum opportunity in Africa. And beyond that, help companies in Africa to make use of the best technology that is being developed by other players across the world in Africa today, not to rely on what could be low-end solutions when there are high-end solutions available. So that is the role that we think we can play. So sorry for a long introduction, but that has been the journey. Thank you, Anahita.
Thank you so much, Farai. That was absolutely fascinating. And last but not least, John.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to tonight's talk. So my background, I'd been working in technology recruitment, mostly with software developers and architects for around 10 years. And then shortly after I had started my first company, a candidate that I knew as a developer said that he was going to create a photonic quantum computer and all the subsystems, and asked me if I could help build his team. So, coming from an IT recruitment background, my initial answer was, of course I can. And then sort of had to work out how to go about doing that, thinking it would be a simple transition. And so that over the last sort of 7 years have gradually become more and more drawn into the whole quantum ecosystem, and very thankful that I have been.
That's fascinating. Thank you, John. So if we reflect on the fact that at Quantum London, we're trying to help people explain the business value of quantum, and without them or the people they're talking to needing to be too technical, Yeah, but at the same time, those of us who follow sort of a quantum computing hashtag on LinkedIn and things are constantly seeing people sharing their certificate for MITx or some other online sort of technical quantum training class, etc. What's the balance? And we'll start with you on this, Chris, and then maybe your view, John. But what's the minimum that people can understand technically? You know, do they clearly not everyone can be a particle physicist or a 10 years of coding, but you know, what's the minimum they need to know in order to sound like they're allowed to talk about the business value of something that's clearly very technical? So Chris, if you're happy to go first, and then John on that one.
Okay, so a couple of things. I think first of all, like when I talk about quantum technology, I usually, for people who are not as familiar with what it is and how it works, I usually start with a salient point, kind of an icebreaker, an attention getter, if you will. And I cite the example of Google's Sycamore computer having achieved what they categorize as quantum supremacy, right? In September of 2019, they ran an algorithm. Now, to be fair, some people were derisive and saying maybe it was sort of a toy problem or whatever, but they solved a problem, if you will, at a meta level in 200 seconds on their quantum computer that would have taken a classical computer 10,000 years to solve. So that gets people's attention right away. So just as a way to infer what the potential impact might be, applying that kind of computing power to a range of problems across verticals or disciplines. I mean, everything from finance to weather prediction to optimization. The other thing I would say is people have, you know, a range of opinions about the level of functionality. I mean, Shahar on this call is actually using quantum every day to model complex molecules in a way that you could not conceivably do with traditional gear, right? Now, there are other people who say there are no real world applications of any value being conducted today. So we have two sort of polar extremes. So I would say it's going on. These are the early days for sure, nascent stages. People are trying to figure out what it is. I think of it, you can compare it to the early days of the World Wide Web. I remember when the World Wide Web appeared in the early 90s, people were like, well, what is this thing? Are we going to use this is it going to deliver any business value? I mean, are we just going to like go down rabbit holes clicking on hyperlinks one after the other? And now it's on your wrist, right? So, and we can't live without it, can you imagine? So that's what I would say where quantum technology is today, that it's coming. It's going to be incremental. It's going to be iterative. There are going to be applications that deliver value sooner than later. Some are 5 years out. Some are 20 years out. Some are happening as we sit here. So, hey, Paolo, you're on mute. Sorry.
And I think from my perspective, I think the first thing to say is that the ecosystem moves so quickly, you can identify where that level is as of today. If you go back to the first sort of steps I took within quantum all those years ago, it was very much focused on PhDs. It was very much a lab-based projects and sort of pre-seed startups, and it was a very different place to where it is now. And I think over the last couple of years, coinciding with the pandemic, I think to an extent, and the maturation of technology, I'm seeing more and more roles and positions and requirements for people who aren't particle physicists, who aren't algorithm developers. So there's been an evolution through things like product managers, application managers, scientific sales, where the scientists were becoming more business focused and being aligned to those sorts of roles. And now we're seeing it come the other way, because I think quantum's become fashionable and people are interested in it from outside of the quantum bubble. And, you know, I speak to some fantastic people with backgrounds in, for example, marketing or other areas that journalism, that have got a real interest in quantum and a desire to want to learn more about it. And I think the the Quantum 2 revolution is such a big task of work. We need everyone. We need all of the skill sets we can work with. So that could be, companies need websites, so they need a web developer. The publicity machine needs to be handled correctly to avoid overhyping the situation, to get a realistic message to the public. So we need responsible journalism. Companies need both marketing and technical marketing to work out as the fundamental science becomes closer to the end users, to work out exactly what the best way of that to work. And sometimes it's as simple as asking the question, what would you like to see from our technology, and actually having a two-way conversation. So I think the amount of quantum knowledge as a minimum is a constantly shifting thing. But I think the most important thing is that people have got an interest and a desire to learn, because once you start and you reach out to the community, there's a lot of people out there that are willing to share their thoughts and their knowledge and really help people along.
Thank you for that, John. So I'd be interested to know, if you were coming from a different domain and you did want to establish that knowledge in quantum computing, what would be the best resources you'd recommend? And how would, for example, you be able to go to an employer, and how would they distinguish that you have quantum computing knowledge if you come from a more non-traditional background? And maybe we start off with Shahar and then go to Farai.
Sure. So especially for us, because we are users of quantum, we are not developing hardware. We are writing our own software to run on somebody else's hardware. We care that people would understand how to write the code and how to optimize it on the specific system that we're working on. Okay, so that's the number of gates you can use, for example, and how to divide your problem to solving that kind of problems. And I think the only way to do that is by trial and error. So the way a lot of the people that we're talking with, they went and they took, the D-Wave examples, and they simply ran those examples themselves. They solved their own problems. They used Python for that. And then they can come to us and said, look, either on Git or some other place, they will have their own set of software that people can use. For me as an employer, that's something that I'm looking for. I'm looking for people who can show me not only that they've learned, but also that they've applied what they learned. D-Wave is a good source. Somebody else has said this before, the Qiskit, IBM textbook and classes. I found, if you're interested in understanding quantum, Kitty Young from Microsoft set of series is also an excellent source. So there are a lot of sources around. You need to, at some point, choose one, go through the examples and test them on a problem that you choose. And that's something you can bring to an employer.
Thank you, Shahar. And Farai?
Thank you very much, Anna. So I may not say anything new, because I'll simply be repeating what Shah has mentioned, because that has been my journey as well. So when even at community building level, when we are talking to our members and the people who have come through to share the experts, the message seems to be the same, that the best thing that helps is the right attitude. So when somebody has the right attitude and is interested in quantum, and they take practical steps to develop, and these practical steps obviously include, initially, you are part of a community. Communities are very important and integral part of this whole learning journey. Then obviously there is need to show some badge and show some certificates, and I think there are a lot of places where that can happen. And for me, it has been Coursera has got some courses that you can take, and I think they give the way the courses are structured allows one to prove that they are really dedicated at what they do. because they are really timed and you have to complete your course in a certain time. EDX is another platform. And the good thing about it is you have got certifications. And even I think IEEE, there's a very good work being done by Maeva. She invites experts there, and when you join those sessions from these leading experts in the industry, you get certificates, and this can prove, and like Shah said, those are the things that the companies want to see. If you want to create real opportunities in this space and to prove that you are dedicated, you are, inspired, you want to really develop, and you deserve to be supported, then you also need to be taking action. Qiskit is a very good community, one that is very responsive. I'm also a Qiskit advocate, so I can attest to that. And, they have a big community, they have a mentorship program, they've got even what I would call, it's an unofficial mentorship program, because when you're on their platform, there are different channels where you can ask questions, some of them that are elementary to complicated. And you don't normally go for more than 3 days at most without a response from somebody who is in the know or who can direct you to somebody who can help. So that is also another very good platform. I think courses like the one being offered by MIT is very good for professionals because it's a bit more detailed, and obviously the way that we Oliver and team have structured that course allows you to be able to take that certificate and prove your competence. I know they do a very good job. I've had people coming to our community who come and share, also talking about that. And there are a lot of resources, videos, like Shah said, shared as well. DWEV, they've got a channel on YouTube, and some of the companies that they've been working with, we have been using the hardware, are very accessible people. They all even share a lot of detail about how you can map problems into a way that allows that problem to be handled by a quantum computer. So there is plenty of ways which people can take. And I think it's important to always make sure that after the initial stages where you're part of a community, you get the support, you network, and sometimes you find people who are also interested in the same direction as you, and who become part of your journey, who can support you to grow. Then going further, you begin to take those courses, get certifications, and begin to prove. And I think GitHub is a very good platform, because it allows you to develop skills, to collaborate, which is very important when you join an organization and are working in a team, and especially now working online. And I think that's a very important skill. And it has also lowered the barrier of access as well. So yeah, I think those are going to be my quick comments on that question.
So thank you for that. Maybe we then turn the question completely on its head, and Christopher, maybe we start with you on this, which is, so we're saying that there's plenty of people out there with the right attitude, lots of tools and classes and training. So where people are enthusiastic, actually there's ways for them to learn. Now, yeah, if I'm a mid-level or senior manager in an organization, we're not doing anything in quantum, but I've heard that it's relevant. I want to start doing something. I can see why it's important to my company and to my industry. What are the challenges for me? What are the routes as I start to want to build a quantum-ready workforce?
Let's say it's a great question. I think we have to think broadly too, sort of to John's point earlier. I mean, you need a range of skills and disciplines to drive understanding and adoption and business value behind quantum technologies, right? So one of the good things is that there's a lot of quantum technology that's available in the cloud, right? So you can sort of test algorithms. You don't have to invest a lot of money. I mean, actually, we had a conversation recently where someone said, well, is this really just for big business? And actually it's not, because you can rent time, for example, on IBM's quantum computers. Amazon has a fantastic instantiation of 3 different qubit configurations called Bracket, B-R-A-K-E-T. I'll try to find the URL and put it in the chat, but you can, depending on which qubit you're comfortable using, or that your, say, internal team is comfortable using, you can sort of job it out, if you will, find resources that you can engage, again, without a lot of investment. Now, that said, there's a very limited pool of people who can do that kind of work, but they're out there and growing. And again, people like John and other organizations are tracking them down and pointing them to opportunities and connecting them with companies. So I would say, and the net, meta message is get started, because it's happening now. I put some use case URLs in the chat. This is really happening. Again, Shahar is doing this every day as we sit here, and many other companies in financial services, companies in manufacturing. Google is focused on quantum AI. So it's happening. I'd say to listeners, watchers, figure out where there's an opportunity to get engaged. What problem might you solve with a quantum solution, and get started. Hire people, contract people, look at the options that are available. Microsoft has an Azure instance that offers quantum access as well. So time to begin is now.
Absolutely. As they say, the best time to begin was yesterday, but if you can't, then it's now.
Exactly.
Shahar, just maybe taking some of your specific experience on this, and you've touched on it already, but if you find someone who's sort of clearly got all the prerequisites to be good at this topic, but maybe hadn't thought about it before, do you have a sense of how easy is it to get them excited as an individual that this clearly is the future?
Very easy. I mean, this is such a cutting edge area, and people are really, they want to, okay, not everybody, but the people that we talk with, people who write code, they are really excited about this. This is the same kind or the same level of revolution that AI or machine learning were 15 years ago, right? This is going to change the world. The time to learn it is now. The time to influence where this field is going to go to is now. On the contrary, in many cases, we find it the opposite way. We want people who understand both sides, who understand both the chemistry that we're talking about, the biology we're talking about, and also know how to implement it on a quantum computer. That's much more difficult to find. I think it's easier to find people who know how to write code for quantum, or who understand quantum system. The combination of the two areas is more difficult. So my advice here is find what you're good at, what you know today, okay? And see how you can apply quantum computing to your problems. That's the way to move forward in learning something.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Shahar. And I just want to ask, what sort of skills would you say that people already might have, whether they be software engineers, data scientists, or product managers? What are the transferable skills, the main skills that you see already candidates might have that are best suited to joining a quantum computing startup or a quantum computing company? I'll maybe start with John on that one.
Yeah, so I think related to that, there's been some points made by Doug in the chat, not the one about being in his dressing gown, but the one about transferable skills from being an enterprise architect. So I used to work quite a lot with enterprise architects, solutions architects, and that skill set is being used, but it's very because of the R&D nature of what's happening, and it's really sort of nascent technology. With architecture, a lot of the time people are technology agnostic, whereas because of where the quantum revolution is, there's a bit more sort of specialization with that. But those strands are sort of coming together, and I can see that coming into play. Then coming back to the point about sort of transferable skills. So I think there's kind of the obvious one. So if you're working with software or machine learning, AI, you can transfer from machine learning to quantum machine learning, and you've kind of developed some of those skills. But on top of that, so I think obviously Farai and Shahar have mentioned the sort of training courses involved and things like that, and being visible in the community. It's quite a small community at the moment, so being present at events, going through some of the courses. and there's so much opportunity to learn and grow that actually just that interest is a really powerful thing, because it's a small enough community to become familiar. And I think the first thing that people need to focus on is what they're interested in, because quantum technologies have the potential to really impact pretty much every area of life. So to a certain extent, it's not about fitting in with what you think people want. It's about exploring what's important to you, become interested in that, and then follow that path. Because if you're interested in something, you're going to get the most value out of your role, and the company that you work for is going to get the most value from your work. You're going to be thrilled every day to come in. You're not going to be there for a year or 18 months. You're going to be there for 10 years or 18 years. So that mindset and understanding what's important to you first, and then work onto that, work out what you need to do to make that happen. That would be my advice to people looking to make their way in the markets.
Thanks, John. And Farai, as a community builder, with a community, you have many members who are particularly interested in maybe joining this field. Do you see any specific kind of role that people are coming from where they are wanting to transition into quantum computing, or from any specific fields, or is it really a mix? And do you see a wide variety of people interested in joining the quantum computing industry?
Thank you, Anna. So it seems that for some reasons that I don't know, that I can't explain, the interest is diverse, really. Just yesterday, I was speaking to one of my cousins who is a teacher, and he's saying to me, okay, what is quantum? And I'm trying to figure out, because I'm a head of school, and I'm trying to figure out how do we position for that as a school as well. It's a public school in Zimbabwe. So and it doesn't end there. So it means that there are people from all walks of life who just get fascinated in one way or another by quantum, or come across it on social media and online, and just get curious about what it is. And for that reason, we have structured our community to cater for everyone who is active and interested. That's our mission, to make sure that everyone is active and interested, wherever they are, whoever they are, get an opportunity to contribute. And that is mainly inspired by the earlier concern I mentioned about how I felt uncertain I had a place in quantum, because I didn't see a pathway to beyond what I was doing at MSc. But because things turned out otherwise, and I want that story to be true for everybody else. And even like what we tend to be agreeing on here is quantum is so important. Some of the problems we want to solve with it are, the world's most challenging problems. And it is important for people who are even in those communities where these problems persist to understand quantum technology, and also be equipped with skills that allow them to be part of the solution, instead of getting those solutions prescribed from elsewhere. So because of that, and because of this community drive we're doing in Africa, the real idea is to make sure that we rally the continent forward and make everyone in the continent who wants to participate know that they can do it from here. They don't need to relocate. And if we have got some problems we're still struggling with, like hunger, we want perhaps better fertilizers that are cheaper, and there's a lot of material science to go in that direction, then we want these people to be given a chance to learn how to solve those problems for themselves. If it's about improving battery storage, where they chat earlier with Chris on how I use solar energy, but the entry point for solar systems is still very high. Not many people can afford. If we're going to improve the efficiency of the cells, if we're going to improve the batteries, and even move into perhaps leapfrog and jump into electric vehicles, then we need people in the continent to be part of that solution as well. So all these people come from different backgrounds. It's not anything specific. So, and I want to quickly distinguish between there are people who have to be quantum aware, and that's the broader society. And then there are going to be people who have to be proficient in the different demands of their work. So all these things, can only happen if everyone has got an opportunity to contribute. And I'm happy to say what we see from the community building side is that the interest is across the board. There are people who have joined the community who came from some very unusual backgrounds. In humanities, we have been so passionate, started playing with devices and platforms online, and we have registered amazing growth. And there are also places like in our community for mentorship. We do projects, and these allow everyone to contribute and to jump on and begin to learn as long as they feel they're up for it. So yeah, that would be the quick indication that we see from the community building side.
Fantastic, thank you. And in a minute, I want to jump to Katie's question in the chat, Katie McLaughlin's. But before that, just a few points. I mean, John, you mentioned, and I think everyone knows at the point that this is still inherently a small community. There's many thousands of people who care about this topic, but compared to AI or blockchain or where there's many millions, there is absolutely possibility for people to be visible in a way that there isn't in many other places. And just an offer to those of you listening, we, as many of you know, on a more or less monthly basis, we run a Quantum London Stammtisch event, which is instead of just having a number of experts speaking for the whole session, is much more of an interactive discussion. So if any of you want to take 2 or 3 minutes on the virtual stage at some point, let Anna, myself, or Em know, and you can speak at one of our Quantum Stammtisch. We're very keen to build the community that way. Also, I'll stick a couple of points in the chat, a couple of links in a moment, linked to what we have said. One is just a link to a talk that we had Doug Finke do, and there's been a link to his quantum computing report, but you may find the video he did for us useful. Another is a link to Brian Lenihan, who many of you know because he's recently published a book on the business aspects of quantum computing, on what he calls a quantum business strategist, which links a little bit to the architect point earlier. Who is the person who is going to link the technology side and the business side? So unfortunately, that's behind a medium paywall, so you won't all be able to access it, but I'll put it here now and I'll try and find the free link later. But to jump to Katie's question, how should a quantum hobbyist approach their employer about leveraging quantum? That is such a key question, not just today, but will be over the next few years. Maybe Chris and John, this is you. Chris, you posted a few things in the chat. Maybe you just want to summarize those key messages. And then John, I know you talk to people about this regularly. So Chris first and then John, please.
Yeah, I'd say, again, at a meta level, like try to find a solution, a problem that a quantum solution could address, right? So to get funding, to get support, to get resources assigned, to put a team together, there's got to be some business problem that quantum is solving, right? The people are, unless you're in a situation where someone is, got a lot of money to spend and doesn't really care about the P&L or making their bogey, which seems unlikely. You want to find some way, some setting within the organization where a quantum solution might solve a problem more efficiently, more productively, more effectively than the existing approach. So it could be around optimization, could be around material science, could be around, in the case of like, what Shahar is doing, drug discovery. So becoming familiar with what kind of solutions quantum computing can offer, and then map it to a part of your organization where it would deliver value, right? Because ultimately you want to get someone to write a check, right? And it'll certainly be, odds are good, a skunk works initially, right? Kind of under the radar, with any luck, air cover from a P&L for, a couple of years maybe. But convince, if you can, your management chain or people with discretion that this is important, that it's viable, that there may be a return on investment at some point. There certainly will be. It may not be in the next quarter, but it might be in the next 3 years or 5 years. But again, getting started now, right, is key. And I put some links again. So there's a great article in The Economist about kind of where quantum computing is and where it's going. There are lots of business cases. IBM purports to have use cases in financial services and in pharma. So depending on what vertical or industry you're in, look for real world examples and put the pitch together with, here's where we are, here's where we could be, here's what it'll cost, right? That's what I would say at a meta level, right?
And I think just to sort of echo those comments, that finding a value chain, finding a business reason for that, and to further the point about Brian Lenihan, I think the Quantum Boost book is a good place to sort of start that. But I think there's also something fundamental in that. We're sort of seeing the first signs of an offensive or a defensive strategy. So some organizations are embracing quantum technology and trying to push forward with it. And then there's others that don't want to get left behind and don't maybe have such a strong strategy around that. And I think with any business decisions, the more that you take control of your own strategy rather than reacting to others, the more that you control your own destiny. So I think, as I say, to echo Chris, to find real use cases that are relevant and will excite the person with the purse strings, but also to work out how much you want to control the future of your company. And it may be that that's in 10 years or 15 years. It may be that some of the applications are within the next 2 or 3 years, but to look at that roadmap and try to apply it to the industry you're in as well, because a solution for say pharma isn't going to be the same as for agriculture, which again isn't going to be the same for banking or sports. So yeah, and as you said before, that if you think quantum physics or quantum mechanics is the underlying fundamental principle of the universe, so within that there's something that I think you'll be able to find a way of finding an avenue that fits in with the company's ethos.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Since we're really at the beginning initial stages of building a quantum computing ecosystem and sort of defining what the industry is going to look like, there's no better time than now, I guess, to consider diversity and inclusion. So I want to ask you, Shahar, how do we build a diverse quantum workforce?
So I think for us as a young industry, it should be very easy for us. I mean, we're a young industry. Everybody is entering now at the ground level. And we should be able to attract the best people in every field to join us. And we should be able to attract a very diverse people to join us as well. I think some of the work that has been done through Quantum Sheet, through Women in Quantum, some of the work that Farai is doing is really important. And I've seen that at some of the conferences where maybe 1.5 to 2 years ago, the panelists and a lot of the people that participated in those conferences were mostly from one group of people. And now you see a much more diverse group of people participating. And I think it's part of us as a community. It's our role to bring in more diverse set of people. So starting from when you talk about what you do, remember that there are other groups out there that needs to hear you. Okay, so it's not enough to talk just with one group of people. It's important to talk with other groups as well, to bring them to the table, to interview candidates that are more diverse, and to make the connections. Okay, so make the connections that whenever you're introducing people, you're making sure that the people that you introduce are diverse. And you get, if we do that, we will get, I mean, one of the things that everybody's worried is not having enough workforce. We need to increase our workforce. And diversity is one of the best ways to do that. We include more and more candidates that can do what we want, we start from a more diverse workforce. And coming from all over the world, this is, right now we've seen, the last year have shown us that we can work all over the world, that we can find good people all over, every gender, every background, everything, right? It should be, we should be, as a community, we should be the community of the future.
Yeah, hear, hear.
Thank you, Shahar. And yes, we've definitely seen, you know, it's since having to move everything online in Quantum London, it's been great to be able to connect worldwide with such, you know, a diverse group of people. It's definitely been a blessing in disguise. We've got a question in the chat, which I just want to put to you, Farai. It's coming from Angel saying, could you please share a good example or metaphor that illustrates how quantum computation really happens as per traditional bits for a layman person?
That's a very difficult one, as easy as it sounds.
Really? Well,
after you, Farai.
Good luck.
Don't look at it though.
So, okay. So
Okay.
I don't know if I can avoid saying something that she has already heard. But all the same, I always think it's very important that we simplify this. So it's a very important question. Whether I'm able to answer it or not is something else, but it's a question that we have to pose again and again and again. So I think I always want to explain about how we are moving from classical to quantum by looking at what has been happening as we tried to improve the performance of classical computing. And when I say classical computing, I'm talking about the computers that you and me are used to and are using today for the different amazing applications. So as our appetite to keep on improving these devices, increases, we have also been making our transistors very small. And unfortunately, it seems that we have a limit as to how much we can do that. So as we keep on going on and on, we get to a point where, we get to the size of an atom. And when we get at that subatomic level, the physics, it changes completely into something else. So in this world of physics, there are different laws and there are different terms that we begin to introduce. And there are some terms like superposition, like entanglement, that begin to arise. And without explaining perhaps these terms and coming back to explain on the differences between how your classical computers and your quantum computers would operate. So whilst in the classical case, we've got more of your switch scenario, which is an on and off, which is your 0 and 1 state. And those are the only possibilities we can use to represent information. However, as much as we get these devices smaller and get to subatomic level, and like I said, the new rules emerge, we have to start paying attention to different laws of physics. And in this realm, it seems we have got a globe of possibilities. When we look at, I think I want to use the analogy of a globe, where the way that a sphere looks like. So in this world, whilst we've got a North Pole and a South Pole, which could represent our on and off switch, in quantum, this globe gives us many other different possibilities. So it has got a bigger space. We can represent information. For example, if we were to go to the center of a globe, you are midway between going to the north and going to the south. And we can begin to give these values such identities. And this now leads you to this whole aspect of superposition. Because if I was going to ask you, where are you? You have to tell me where you are relative to the North and South Pole at the same time. So you may be nearer the South Pole more than you are nearer to the North Pole. And there are ways of representing this information. And this information is represented in terms that influence the amplitude of what we call qubits, which are now your this globe that I've given you, let's consider it as a qubit, which is a quantum bit. And this is how it is different from your classical bit, which only has a north and south pole, if ever I didn't have any better way of saying it. So your qubit has got a globe representation, which allows you to be in different places. And in these different places, the identity, it gives you a larger way of representing information, which allows us to have many possibilities that begin to give us advantages in terms of whenever we need speed up, whenever we need to consider multivariate problems, especially in complex optimization. So we've got a better way, or a different way, let's call it, not a better, a different way of harnessing these quantum capabilities to help us to get to the next level in terms of problems that we can't get the same benefit on classical devices, which could be optimization, where speed ups happen, and it seems coincidentally, the way nature operates is more represented by a quantum world. And this is what Shahar and the greater community are harnessing, those properties of nature, which are now being imitated to a higher level. We are not yet perfect, but to a higher level by quantum devices available on the cloud that we can begin to use to try and solve some of these problems that are difficult to solve on classical devices, as it were. I know it's a terrible explanation and a long winding one, but perhaps that is the kind of conversation I would have with someone. Then if they have got other questions, then we begin to zoom in on those. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well done for taking that challenge.
Really.
I think everyone was relieved that it was assigned to you, not to them. Craig has put in the chat that he likes the constantly flipping coin analogy. We haven't got time right now for him to explain that, but that is also one, Angela, that's worth looking up as a way it's sometimes explained. I wanted to go the other way and ask what's probably a very easy question. In fact, also I think posed by Angel. Just all four of you will either have an immediate answer or not, and that's fine. But just in terms of where we stand with venture capital investment in the space now, to some extent that's very different to our core conversation. But I think the reason I just want to ask it is, at the end of the day, technologies, communities, they all grow when there's money, and the big money obviously comes ultimately from the customers who buy things, but I think we all know that it's when the VCs start investing that they've got a sense that something's really going somewhere. So maybe starting with you, Shahar, what would you suggest are the state of investment of VCs, and what does that indicate for the health of the industry?
So I think there are two kinds of VCs. There are the groups that know quantum computing and that are understanding the industry, understanding the technology, and they are investing based on their understanding, and they're very knowledgeable. But there's also a much larger group of VCs and investors that are slowly learning about the capabilities of the technology. And they're coming to it from a very different perspective. And that perspective is, how do we make money? How do we use this technology? And there, it's our job to teach them, to show them what's working, what's not working. And I think for us as an industry, and for me as a CEO of a company, this is one of the most enjoyable parts of this process, is when you show people what this technology can do. How do you get a better return on investment? How people can start now to use the technology, which will change the world, right? Or hit the ground running when better computer comes in. And there is money in this field, but we have to be cognizant of what we are promising and on the time scales of things. So you cannot promise tomorrow to run on 1,000 qubits on an IBM Gate computer, because it's not going to happen tomorrow. You can run it on D-Wave. So we have to be accurate in what we are proposing and what we're saying. And then we can find the resources.
Fantastic. That's a great answer. Farai, anything to add to that?
Sorry, I kind of drifted. What was the question, Paolo?
The question was simply where people start to invest money is always a good indicator that something is gaining traction. And I think Shahar laid out very nicely that there's VCs who know the space, and then there's VCs who don't, but are realizing that's important. And I just wondered if you had anything specific to add to that, or would simply agree with what she said.
Sure. Since I have unmuted, I'll simply echo what she said in a different way. I think for the quantum tech space, I want to agree with some thought leaders who suggest that instead of perhaps looking at quick gains, you have to understand that we still have a long way to go with the technology, and even for venture capitalists, I think they have to approach quantum as biotech, where you are looking at there are companies that are taking all the risks in order to prove the technology, in order to give to develop certain parts of certain parts or certain scientific parts of the technology, so that we go to the next level. And these are going, I guess, as we go, going to be integrated into bigger companies, which we have been working at delivering solutions already. So it's more of a research R&D effort, instead of looking for quick wins, because I think it kills the honest spirit of trying to build this technology to a level where we need it to be. And if ever people are put under pressure to show quick gains and to prove value much earlier than what is possible, then we've got a lot of hype, and it's not going to be good for the industry at large. So I think appreciating that it's R&D to a greater extent. Of course, there are things that are well developed where value is being realized today, but for quantum computing, there could be a long way to go and investing, understanding that we are developing the science. Even if we don't get to prove that things work, it is very important to prove that things don't work. It is also, it leaves us with a lot of good lessons that we can use to map up the next stages or the path forward and etc.
No,
can I just
yes, Chris,
can I just jump in? I think the simple answer is, who's investing in quantum computing? Everybody. That's the bottom line. I mean, I just did a session for a group called Open Ocean. They're based in London. They're a VC firm. I think it's worth pointing out that firms are investing pretty granularly, if you will. So hardware and software at a meta level, even photonic or trapped ions, qubit specific kind of investments. I'm looking at a slide I have here. I could share it with you, but it's like everyone from Goldman to Draper to the Founders Fund, Andreessen Horowitz, smaller VC firms, AE Investments, Data Collective. So they're getting granular and specific around where they're putting money, but pretty much all the big firms see this as an opportunity, based on the potential revenue. So.
Makes sense. Fantastic. And so as we wrap up then, John, instead of asking you exactly the same question, just a slightly different angle on it than maybe your view in the UK, but from elsewhere as well. So we've talked about investors. The question is government. Ultimately, ecosystems really get built if there's government support, especially in early stage technology like this. I don't know if you've got any closing thoughts, John, on whether government investment is appropriate and whether it varies by country.
Yeah, so I think if you look at the evolution over the last few years, but barring a few notable exceptions like your D-Waves and some of the laser manufacturers, a lot of the projects started off as university spin-outs or people working sort of stealth startups. And we've seen that the government funding come into play more and more. And there's, you know, even with some of the models now, there's, over the years, I've known a lot of very frustrated inventors and founders of organizations, and there is more trickling through, but obviously there's more mouths to feed, more people want to get involved. I think to take forward what Chris mentioned as well, that you know, the banks that are getting involved, and what Shahar mentioned about having the VCs that understand the space and the ones that don't. A few years ago, there were very few VCs that understood the space, even within deep tech focused VCs, and that point of critical mass is important. I'm also seeing, you know, I work with a couple of really innovative, not-for-profit government-funded agencies that are looking to, you know, find that next great idea, fund the project, provide support systems, an ecosystem, so potentially suppliers and customers, and really kind of looking at and having people that understand the space to champion those causes. So whilst I think government funding has its limits, when in terms of it as a commercial entity, I think it's hugely important. And you can see recently where, for example, the UK, the US, Canada, China have kind of got into the space earlier than others, and there's a lot of countries sort of playing catch up now. And for example, from Germany, I hear sort of people saying that there's more money than there is people to use it at the moment. So that won't last long. But
it won't last long. Brilliant. Well, thank you, John. So just before I thank our panelists, just to touch on what's coming in the coming weeks. There's only one timetabled event. That is on July the 19th, our next Quantum Stamtish. So as mentioned, anyone who wants to ask some of these general questions or wants to share what they're doing, then please do join us at 6 p.m. UK time on the 19th. We're also planning a session on investments and venture capital. So obviously we'll share the date for that once we've got it plugged in. We're also having another session on the security side, specifically aimed at those in information security, chief information security officers, etc. So again, we'll publicize that. So really all it remains to say is from Anna, from myself, from the whole community, thank you, John. Thank you, Shahar. Thank you, Farai, and thank you, Christopher, for your time, your insight tonight, but obviously much more importantly than just today, what you've been doing more broadly. I know you all speak regularly on these type of events and in many ways, and in these early stages, it's having articulate, positive, energetic people such as yourselves that is key to everything we're all doing. So thank you very much and good day.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much, guys.
Paolo,
Thanks,
thank you,
Paolo.
everybody.
Thanks, Anahita.
Bye.
Thanks,